Hello students, we should now learn about what is rheumatic heart disease. So in my previous video you would have seen what is rheumatic fever, and I'm sure that would have given you a clear understanding about what is rheumatic fever, how is it caused, and what are the different systems of the body that it actually affects, rather what are the complications. So you definitely know that it plays a very important role in causing a great damage to the heart. When I say the heart, yes, the layers of the heart are being affected and eventually severe valve damage. Now again, what is the meaning of rheumatic heart disease? It actually describes a group of short term, which is nothing but the acute, so which happens suddenly, okay, and long term, which means nothing but chronic, and it goes on for a longer time, heart disorders that occur as a result of acute rheumatic fever. So that is the reason why we started off this portion of the cardiovascular diseases as you begin with studying what is rheumatic fever, so you understand it better. Now we know that yes, repeated episodes of this can put a lot of pressure on the different systems, and this is how it causes the rheumatic heart disease. Also, we know once the layers of the heart are being affected, and especially once it goes into the inner layers of the heart, that is the endocardium, and you know that the valves are also in danger. So damage to the heart valves is a common result of rheumatic fever, and this damages that lead to the defect of the heart. So we know and we have studied this in the valvular heart disease, and we know the ways that it can damage the pumping action of the heart. The acute rheumatic fever is a condition in which the connective tissues of the body, the heart, the joints, the brain and the skin are swollen. So all this I have actually explained to you in my previous session, the rheumatic fever. It is usually seen in children between 5 to 15 years old, or rather 7 to 15 years old, especially when the child's immunity is. Now what is rheumatic heart disease? So rheumatic heart disease, or in short it's called as RHD, is the most common acquired heart disease. So it is not like you inherit it, okay. So it is really it's acquired due to that particular condition, or where the child is being exposed to that particular temperature or particular living conditions. And what it does is it actually spreads. So from the different layers of the heart, eventually, as I told you, it can affect the pericardium or the myocardium, and also eventually affect the endocardium, which is the inner layer of the heart, causing a disastrous damage to the valves of the heart. Now this actually picture is showing you the cross section of the heart, and also how a normal valve should be looking like. And when there is an infection, you can see that a little bit of, you can see the growth of the bacteria right there, and all this is how the valves get stiffened, hardened, and it is not in a position to function effectively. The main function of the valves, is to allow the blood to flow through the chambers, okay. So all this I have explained to you in detail in the valvular heart disease. So this is the way, when you look at the heart and when you rule out this particular condition, this is how it would show up. Now the valve damage due to rheumatic heart disease, so this is another detailed picture which is showing you the rheumatic heart disease always affects the left side heart valves, the normal valve and the rheumatic mitral valve. So you can see how the normal mitral valve is supposed to look like, whereas when it is infected, this is the way it looks. Now when the heart is involved, inflammation can develop on the surface, and this is what I told you. So it can affect any layers of the heart. So it can be the inflammation, or rather the infection of the outer layer, that's the pericardium, causing pericarditis, the middle layer, the myocardium, and resulting in myocarditis, and also it can be the inner layer, the endocardium, resulting in endocarditis, okay. And this eventually causes permanent damage to one or more of the 4 heart valves, and as per research and study, they say that yes, it could be affecting the left side more than the right. And what happens is as we know, the valves either become too hardened or becomes a leaky valve. Now coming to the first condition, that is the pericarditis. So which is nothing but, when you're looking at this picture here, you know that it is nothing but the inflammation of the heart, and I'm just showing you the picture about how a normal pericardium looks like. And when it is inflamed, you can see that it becomes puffy, it is swollen, there's a bit of fluid build up as well. So that is nothing but the Now definition of pericarditis, okay, so is a swelling and irritation of the pericardium, and what happens, it's like a thin sac like membrane which is surrounding the heart. So that is a proper definition of what a pericardium is. And when that particular thin sac like membrane which is surrounding the heart gets infected, resulting in inflammation, that particular condition is called as the pericarditis. And what are the signs and symptoms the patient can usually exhibit? Yes, definitely chest pain, and there can be arrhythmias. And when you do an ECG as well, you can see the ECG changes. So what's that? It can also be causing the fluid buildup in the sac, and again the breathing becomes an issue, and also we can see the drop in blood. What are the causes for this particular condition? Yes, it can be any sort of inflammatory disorders, which could be lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. It could also result from trauma, which is nothing but injury to your heart or the chest, and other health disorders like anything that is affecting your kidney, if the patient is diagnosed with AIDS, tuberculosis, and even cancer. Also, certain long-term medications, like especially when the patient is having a chronic illness, or when the patient is on long-term medications, this can also have an impact on the patients. Now, what is the pathophysiology of this? So, what really happens in the patient's body when this person is experiencing this condition? Yes, so due to all the etiological factors, there is an infection in the body. Yes, we all know that, resulting in an inflammatory response. And due to this, yes, the body is trying to defend by producing, and also the neutrophils are also reacting to this, trying to defend the body as well. But again, once these infections and the bacteria are all permeable, it results in the infection really gets into the system, and eventually resulting in the tissue damage, and that is how the heart muscle actually gets affected due to this, and eventually leading in an edematous condition. And due to this particular inflammation and edema, the patient is really going to have difficulty in breathing, and also having severe chest pain. What are the clinical manifestations to this? So when the patient is experiencing this kind of signs and symptoms, yes, the person will be showing or experiencing deep and severe sharp pain in the chest, shortness of breath, especially even while the patient is reclining. So even if the patient does not have to be lying flat, even in that sitting up position as well, the patient is going to be exhibiting shortness of breath, because what happens is due to this fluid buildup, yes, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the heart, as well as this is going to eventually show up on the pressure on the lungs as well, and this is going to have the heart is not in a position to pump effectively, because again it's a tissue damage. The patient will also be having palpitations, low grade fever, overall a sense of weakness, fatigue, and feeling sick, okay, and severe cough episodes can also be seen in a person having this particular condition, and abdominal and as well as leg swelling. So we know that edema is also one of the main signs. The complication associated with this particular disease condition is nothing but constrictive pericarditis. So what is this constrictive pericarditis? It is usually some of the people with pericarditis, okay, particularly when they have long-term inflammation, and especially when it is a chronic condition, they can develop permanent or complete thickening of this particular pericardium. Okay, that means the outer layer becomes very, very thick, and it becomes scarred. So the tissue becomes like a very leathery kind of a, material. And what happens is this causes difficulty in the contraction. So the heart muscle becomes very, very rigid and thickened. So because of that, what happens? The heart is not in a position to pump effectively, and that is called as constrictive pericarditis. The complication also includes cardiac tamponade. So we know that in the first picture I showed you how thin the pericardium actually looks like, which is nothing but a small, narrow, thin sac-like which is covering the heart. And what happens is that there will be fluid buildup in that particular space. So when that happens, it's a dangerous condition which is called as the cardiac tamponade. And because the fluid starts building up overly, and then what happens, it becomes very, very difficult, and the heart is actually literally floating. So and that puts a lot of pressure in the heart. The heart is not in a position to pump effectively. There's going to be decreased cardiac output, and yes, the person's blood pressure is going to also drop, and there is not going to be any sort of cardiac output as well. And this excess fluid puts pressure on the heart and does not allow it to fill properly. So yes, there's going to be a definite drop in blood pressure. That is why we say that the person, when you look at they're definitely going to be ECG changes. The person is going to be experiencing arrhythmias, palpitations, and this is a very fatal or very complicated situation or condition. So the complications will include cardiac. How do we diagnose this particular condition? So yes, a thorough history collection and physical examination, followed by ECG, echocardiogram, a CT scan, as well as a cardiac MRI. Okay, so this will actually rule out, and this gives you the clear picture about what the heart actually looks like. and it will also show us how much of damage is caused in the heart muscle, which is nothing but the fluid, building up of fluid in the structure. Now, how do we manage this particular condition? So, the medical management. So, we know that it is a bacterial infection, and also the person is complaining of pain. So, yes, that's definitely going to be analgesics. So, ibuprofen, Advil, Motrin are some of the common non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications that we can give the person in order to relieve or give them a sense of relief from this infection and inflammation. And also there could be other drugs as per the what the doctors prescribe, and also corticosteroids, which actually gives you immediate relief. So prednisone is one of the most important drug of choice, and this gives you a complete immediate relief when the patient is put on such corticosteroids, as well as NSAIDs, which is nothing but your non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Now, how do we rule out, or how do we actually treat this cardiac tamponade? So we know that the little layer that surrounds the heart is actually very, very minimal or very, very thin, but during this kind of an episode of an infection, that's going to cause a lot of inflammation and a fluid buildup in that particular sac area. And it's very important you kind of drain that particular fluid, because we do not want any sort of extra pressure on the heart. So that particular procedure, and also I mentioned to you that the person is going to be experiencing difficulty in breathing even in the reclining position. Okay, so the person is going to be rushed into the emergency department. Yes, you will see that changes in the ECG, the person's BP, blood pressure is dropping, arrhythmias, severe sharp chest pain. With all this, yes, you can rule out that person is experiencing, and especially when you have the reports of CT and MRI, you will definitely see the heart is really swollen because of this massive fluid buildup. So the person is going to be, or the patient is going to be rushed into the cardiac cath lab, and that is where the procedure called as pericardiocentesis is being done. So what really happens there is the person is being put on the cardiac cath lab table on a sitting position, or rather a reclining position, like almost a semi-Fowler's. We do not put the patient flat because yes, definitely difficulty in breathing. And there's a procedure, so we kind of insert a needle and giving the local anesthetic, and I'll show you that in detail how it is done. So the whole idea is inserting a little tube into that particular sac area and draining out all that excess fluid in the pericardial sac or the cavity. And once you remove that fluid, sometimes it can be loads and loads of fluid that can come out, and especially while removing that itself, you can see that the patient feels better. The ECG improves, also the patient's vital signs actually improve. So once that fluid is out and the sample is actually being sent into the pathology for investigation, we just need to rule out the infection and why and what has actually caused it. And once the procedure is performed, yes, a drain is going to be attached, and the patient is going to be sent into the coronary care unit where he's going to be observed and watched thoroughly and closely for any sort of dropping in his vitals, or how much more of fluid is actually draining out, and all this output is also being kept recorded very accurately, and also the treating team is going to also be informed. And once this settles, yes, the person will be shifted back to the cardiac ward, and from there back home. Now this is how the pericardiocentesis is being done. So you have a clear picture showing here how the needle is being inserted. So for that you need to locate the xiphoid process, okay, of the sternum. The needle is being inserted, and you just kind of locate your collarbone, like on the left shoulder, and that is the angle. So this is not performed by the nurses, obviously this is performed by the cardiologist. And as I mentioned to you, this is a kind of sitting position we give because the person is not just able to lie flat. Okay, and then the local anesthetic is being injected on a big fat. You have a particular kit called as the cardiac, pericardiocentesis kit, which has all the, the needle, the syringes, the drain tube, and everything. And with that needle in position, so the landmark, or how you locate that, is you locate your xiphoid process, and then the left shoulder, the bone, okay, and then that is how you kind of mark. So we know that once you inject it, yes, you will definitely hit the pericardium, and as you kind of draw, you will see that the fluid, the kind of light yellowish fluid starts being collected in that syringe, and no matter how much you try to being sent for investigation. So that is all, and also that is one of the immediate management that we can do in order to give the patient a bit of relief from this particular complication, that is a cardiac tamponade. Okay. Now, another procedure is also the pericardiectomy. So because I told you the complication is also constrictive pericarditis, where the entire pericardium becomes very scarry and very thickened and leathery, so where it is just sitting like a flap around the heart. It is not for making the heart pump effectively. So pericardiectomy is nothing but kind of removing. Ectomy is nothing but like removal. So removing that entire rigid pericardium, and also helps, so maybe that's also in a position to pump better. So pericardic surgical management that can be offered to the patient. Next, after that, coming to the nursing management. So yes, nursing management definitely involves, as I always mentioned, a thorough physical examination, monitoring the vital signs, assessing the patient and observing the patient, making a clear recording of the patient's intake, output, and also especially when the patient is having a drain, you need to really closely watch the site. There is no kind of infection, redness, and also any kind of skin tear or any kind of oozing. So okay, that has to be. And again, when there is a drain in position, it's very important the nurse pays attention to dressing the wound there, making sure that it's dry, and also the collection, monitoring the drain, the sac as well, like observing and monitoring how much of fluid is actually being removed or extracted. And the nursing interventions will also include, yes, obviously when a patient is in the coronary care unit, yes, definitely oxygen administration, and also the positioning of the patient, putting him in a very comfortable position, and because the person will not be able to lie totally flat, and also making sure that he gets adequate rest, and maintaining a peace and quiet environment, hygienic environment, because we know that yes, there is a drain in place, and no matter what the nurses do, very important that they perform strict aseptic techniques. So your sterility is very, very important. You maintain that even in the coronary care unit or the CCU. And also, as I mentioned, monitoring the nursing management will also include explain every procedure to the patient, because it's very, very crucial and critical, because the family would have almost thought that we've lost the patient because the patient would have just collapsed for some reason, and that is nothing but because of the drop in the blood pressure. Again, so very important, and keeping it very, very transparent. So explaining every bit of detail to the patient's family is very important, maintaining the patient's position, helping him breathe better, administering oxygen, also making sure that he's getting his dose of antibiotics as well as anti-inflammatories and analgesics as per prescribed, and making sure his activity, the way, because of the weakness and the fatigue, again, nothing is going to be enforced on the patient, so take it as it comes and how the patient feels better, and slowly trying to encouraging him to increase his activity. So not at a start you're trying to tell him to walk out of bed and start ambulating, so then we're not going to do that, and making sure all his other signs and symptoms like edema and everything else is reduced. So making sure you pay attention to administering the diuretics if it's being prescribed by the doctors as well, and also paying real attention to his nutritional needs, because the patient, yes, will not be in a position to eat, and definitely there's going to be a drop in his body weight as well, and also monitoring the vital signs very, very closely, and making sure there is no chance of any more infections to make sure that the person also gets recovery from this difficulty or the particular disease condition. So with that, we finish the topic pericarditis. In my next session, we will deal with myocarditis. Thank you.